Hello all and welcome to this evening's webinar on PINs Get Things Done. Before we begin, I would like to respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians of the Kulin Nations on whose lands we are presenting today and pay respect to their elders both past, present and emerging. My name is Roxanne and I am the online organiser in the OHS unit at Trades Hall, and today we are joined by HSR Sean Crotty. Welcome, Sean.
Thank you.
All right, so before we get done, before we start going here, we'll just run through some housekeeping. But what we have in store for you after the housekeeping is we'll go over what is a PIN. We'll discuss cease work, some steps for issuing a PIN, inspectors and PINs, and what to do if your PIN remains in dispute by your employer. Okay. So you'll see a nice little tab to your side here. We've taken a screenshot of an example of the attendee interface, and you should see something that looks like this on your computer desktop in the upper right corner. You'll have the opportunity to submit some text questions to myself by typing your questions in the questions pane of the control panel, basically here. And you can do that anytime during our presentation, and we'll collect these and address them during the end of our Q&A session at the end of the presentation. But if you can't see the questions area in your GoToWebinar pane, you may need to expand your panel by clicking on the red arrow button, which is this one here. Okay, and if you do need to raise your hand for anything, just click the little hand button. And I'll make sure to send copies of the slides and a link to the recording in a follow-up email within about a day or two. Okay. So let's get started. What is a PIN? Now, I'll start us off with a poll. So if all of you, I'm just gonna open up our poll here. And our first polling question is, have you issued a PIN before? Now, the options for that are yes or no. So please select the appropriate response and then click submit, and then we'll have a little bit of a discussion about that. So yeah, just select your yes or your no, and we'll talk shortly over that. I'm just gonna open this up here. Great. All right. So far, we've got 100% of you got. All right, it's calculating. All right. Okay, so at the moment, 40. All right, let's hold this off. One more second here. Okay. All right, so we'll close the poll up in a couple of seconds now. Great. So 71% of you have said no, you haven't, and 29% of you have said yes. So for the 71% of you, a PIN is a provisional improvement notice as per Victoria's Occupational Health and Safety Act, and under the Act, an elected health and safety rep has the right to issue a person with a provisional improvement notice if a person is contravening any provision of the OHS Act or any of the regulations, or if they've contravened them and it is likely that the contravention will continue or be repeated. So this is a formal notice from a health and safety representative to their employer, or their employee representative, advising them that there is a health or safety problem at work, but this can only be done if the rep has already consulted with the person about remedying the contravention and the employer or the employer rep has not resolved the problem. Or in other words, telling your employer or duty holder there is currently X OHS issue at work. If we can't agree on a solution to the problem, then the next step in the process is for me to issue a PIN. Can you let me know who I should give the PIN to? So usually sometimes this is enough to, push your employer into fixing the OHS issue because it can scare them a little bit. So your PIN is pretty powerful even if it isn't actually issued. A person to whom a PIN has been issued must either comply with the PIN within the required time or within 7 days after the notice is issued, requires an inspector to attend the workplace, and that's under Section 62 and 63 of the OHS Act. Now, to refer back to our previous poll, we're going to have a continuation of that one. So if you haven't issued a PIN before, have you thought about it? And again, the options are yes or no. So I'm just going to launch that one quickly here. I'll give you guys a couple of seconds So again, please feel free to vote. We've got the options of yes or no. Okay. So 100% of you have thought about issuing a PIN but haven't done it. So, all right, let's follow up with another poll here. All right, no, we're still going. All right. Okay, so far we have 83% of you guys saying yes, you've thought about it, and 14% of you have said no. All right, still those numbers flickering. All right, so we have, all right, so 88% of you guys have said yes, you've thought about issuing a PIN. So if you thought about issuing a PIN, if that many of you have thought about issuing a PIN, 88% of you, but you haven't, what exactly stopped you? All right, so we're going to launch another poll here. So we've got some options. So what stopped you from issuing a PIN if you've thought about it? And the options are the employer fixed the issue, the option, or I was worried about the consequences of issuing the PIN, or I didn't know how to, or of course there's another option. So I'm just going to quickly launch that one. Now, Sean, you've been a HSR for 6 years. How many PINs have you issued?
I've personally issued probably about 40 to 50, I'd imagine. 40
to 50 PINs.
Yes.
All right, that's whew, #1 enemy at work, I'd say.
I think so.
I think so. All right, so this should give you a bit of confidence. We've got a HSR of 6 years who's issued probably between 40 and 50 PINs. So if that doesn't encourage you guys to at least try to issue one, I don't know what's going to encourage you. So, all right, we're still going with this poll so far. Now, do any of these numbers surprise you from the poll, Sean?
Not really, no. Issuing a PIN can be a stressful task to do. You really need to be confident when you do it, and you need a lot of support. So it can be quite daunting. Yeah.
And who would you consider your main support options for?
Definitely the other HSRs and your members of your DWG. It's always very important to keep the members of your DWG informed so that they are there to support you and are aware of the issue as well.
And have there been times where you've accessed support from your union at all?
Yes, they have. Yeah. We've ran campaigns before around mental health. We've done body mapping surveys on site before.
Good. So it's a good support network.
Yeah.
Okay. So the question again from the poll was, for those of you, the 88% that have thought about issuing a PIN but didn't, and the question being, why didn't you? We've had 33% of you say the employer fixed the issue, which is excellent, and that kind of does go to show how powerful just saying that you might issue a PIN is. 11% of you said you were worried about the consequences. No one so far said they didn't know how to, which is excellent. And 56% of you said other. So it'd be interesting maybe at the end of the Q&A if those 56% of you could just let us know what the other reasons were. And, yeah, it'd be interesting to see and probably discuss that a bit further. All right, so I'm just going to close that poll now. Okay. All right, so let's move along. So what about a cease work? Sean, did you want to go through that one?
Yeah, no problems at all. So a cease work can be initiated when there's an immediate threat to health and safety. When one initiates a cease work, you must consult to try and remedy the situation. As we see in step 1, you've got to recognise that there is an immediate threat to safety or health, and due to the degree,
That's right.
And due to the nature of the threat and degree of risk, it is not appropriate to use the issue resolution process in section 73. And that you've already consulted with the employer about the risk.
Okay.
You can direct under section 74 of the OHS Act that work cease in cases of immediate risk. A rep must consult with the employer prior to issuing such a direction, but can go ahead with it even if the employer does not agree. We have also got a handy confirmation of cease work form for you to download that you can hand to your employer and keep a copy of for yourself as record of you having consulted with your employer prior to directing a cease work.
I might just stop you for a second, and I might just quickly show you guys the excellent consultation we have here. So again, on your pane to the right, you'll see that there's a HSR consultation form. I'm just going to open that up for you guys to look at. so you can download this and keep it for yourself. And what's really cool about the record of consultation that we have here, you know, it has a little indicator at the bottom that, you know, you are potentially advising the employer through this consultation that you may choose to exercise your right to issue a PIN. So it's a really good proof to have of consultation. So I recommend printing out a couple for yourself or for your workplace, and always keeping a copy. But I'll let you. Oh, sorry. Hang on a second. There we go. So yeah, sorry. So this is the record of consultation for you guys, and again, here is the signature that you may be issuing a PIN from this consultation. So let's just pop it back to the PowerPoint. And sorry, continue on, Sean.
Yeah, no worries. On top of this provision in the OHS Act, remember that every worker has a common law right to withdraw themselves from an unreasonable threat to their health or safety. However, if your employer doesn't want to meet with you, doesn't agree that there is a problem, doesn't or won't fix it, or keeps putting it off, then OHS Act Section 60 gives you the right to issue a provisional improvement notice, PIN. This is a very important right, and you must make sure that you take all the necessary steps and fill in the form properly.
All right, so let's just do another poll quickly. All right, and the poll question this time is, have you ordered a ceasework? And of course the options are yes or no. So let's just launch that one. I'll give you a couple of minutes to select your option here. So Sean, have you ordered a ceasework before?
Yes, I have, yes.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about what happened and how it went.
Okay, so we had a problem with some forklifts at our work. They were giving false readings about weights on pallets going into high racking. There was a hazard report written which had expired. The information that we were given pretty much affirmed the risk was there and that there was a problem with the forklifts themselves. Management weren't prepared to fix them in a timely manner, and we believed that the amount of pallets that were going up into that high racking, one of them was the hydraulics on the forklift was going to fail shortly. So that's the reason behind issuing the ceasework. Yes.
Okay, and you said that you had risk assessments of that too?
Yes, we did.
And they still ignored it?
Correct, and hazard reports also.
Okay, and so how did the ceasework go?
It went okay. We managed to mitigate the risk, which is first and foremost what it's for. And after consultation, we realised that there wasn't an immediate risk, only after all the information was given to us correctly, and we could make an informed decision about the actual risk at hand.
All right, okay. All right, now it also looks like you guys have answered the poll, and 100% of you have said no, you've never ordered a ceasework, which is interesting. All right, so I'm going to follow that up with another little poll here. So for those of you that haven't, the 100% of you, have you ever thought about it? And the options are no, yes, yes, but I did hesitate in doing it. All right, and we'll give you a couple of minutes to fill that out too. So is there any kind of, what kind of advice would you give to a HSR hesitating to order a ceasework, but really actually recognising that there's an immediate risk to health and safety?
So the most important thing for me, if I'm to assess risk and deem it as an immediate threat, the Act actually states that it's got to be the opinion of the HSR. So you are actually allowed to be incorrect. There are no ramifications. There's another section which touches on using your powers for the wrong reasons. A ceasework, if you believe the risk is there and it's imminent and it's immediate, then you have every right to, and I would advise you to issue a ceasework.
Yeah, so bypass issuing the PIN if it's an immediate risk and go for a ceasework. But yeah, that's great advice, Sean. Thank you. All right, so so the question again was, for those of you that haven't ordered a ceasework and have you thought about it, we've had 50% of you say no, 20% of you say yes, and 30% say yes, but I hesitated. So take some words of advice from Sean here, you know, your union's always there to help you. We're always here to help you.
Always get your HSRs and a good support network, and your members from your DWG. If they're aware that they're being put at risk, they're going to support you. They're
going to push themselves into action for it, and you know, you want to make them feel like their concerns are being listened to, and you are representing their health.
Absolutely, first and foremost. Yeah.
Great advice. Okay, so I'm just going to close this one here. And we'll just continue on with the PowerPoint. Okay, so back to PINs. If there is an OHS problem at work and it's not an immediate threat to health and safety, you must first talk to your employer or your employer representative and ask for the problem to be fixed. And this is the best thing to do anyway, because talking about, as we said, talking about problems as soon as you know about them helps communication between your DWG and you in your role as HSR, and also between your employer. But it also gives you the chance to discuss the solution with your employer before it's actually implemented. So there is a recommendation to follow the issue resolution procedures, either those in the Act, and that's under Section 73 of the OHS Act, or the regulations, Part 2.2, Regulation 22. Or alternatively, your workplace might have an agreed workplace procedure. But of course, a word of advice is, and this is based on members actually coming to us, do not follow any issue resolution procedure by management that says you cannot issue a PIN, because you can, and it's written in the law that you can. And HSRs are the only people that have that power other than inspectors. So it's a very powerful thing to have. So remember, with consultation, you can always consult through email, but this email's important because it ensures that your consultation has a paper trail. And of course, you can CC anyone and everyone into this consultation email too. So management, your OHS officer, your unions, the rest of your HSRs. Yeah, and a paper trail is important. So, I mean, we have the option of having the consultation form that we pointed out to you, and again, download it and print it out. But it's never going to harm you to have a paper trail via email. So if your employer has failed to consult with you, you must specify that they have contravened Section 35, which is Section 35 of the Act, which is duty of your employer to consult, and use Section 36, which is how employees are to be consulted, to explain how they failed to consult. The employer does not need to reciprocate your attempt at consultation, as long as you have, and the screen goes to show here, attempted to consult with your employer with record by giving them information about the issue. Number 2, giving your employee the opportunity to have their say. And number 3, if they have given you their say, take the view of your employer into account before making your decision. So if you followed these 3 steps, that means you've consulted. So if you send an email and 15 minutes later issue a PIN, that isn't consultation, because you haven't given the opportunity for your employer to respond and have their say, and you haven't taken into account what their say may be. But if you send an email and tell your employer you would like to discuss the issue within the next 7 days, that's an example of offering your employer the opportunity to consult. And consultation doesn't have to mention you're planning to issue a PIN either. It just needs to be you raising the issue to your employer and saying it needs to be fixed. However, if you've consulted with your employer and your employer doesn't, and the OHS issue doesn't get fixed in a reasonable time, or he or she doesn't agree that there is a problem, but you still do, the next step is to consider issuing a PIN. A health and safety issue or problem can be any item in the general duties of the OHS Act. So any hazard or potential hazard or any procedural issue relating to health and safety, for example, anything under Part 4 of the Act, duty to consult, that's an OHS problem. So, Sean, how did you've issued so many PINs, so how did your consultation work and what did it look like?
So normally after consulting, I always take a record. We always take notes. And when consulting, I'm always consulting with another HSR, never by myself.
Nice, yeah.
And we always take notes on the conversation itself. And then we give the company a record of consultation afterwards.
Yeah, yeah.
Clearly outlining what we believe has occurred and what needs to be how the hazard needs to be remedied.
Yeah, yeah. And remember, it's always, you have the option to offer that opinion on how it should be remedied. If
Correct.
you don't feel confident, yeah, it's okay.
You can leave it up to the employer.
Yeah. So have you ever been knocked back before for lack of consultation before issuing a PIN?
I've been threatened, but
You've been threatened. Great.
But they didn't get it. did not get WorkSafe out.
Okay,
So,
okay.
Yeah, I think it was an idle threat.
Yeah, okay. And I'm sure that happens quite a lot too.
Yes.
And so in your experience, was raising the fact that you were going to issue a PIN enough to get the issue sorted?
It has in some instances, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it has. Depending, my workplace is a revolving managers and that type of thing.
Yeah.
So the reason for issuing so many PINs is I suppose, the different management that comes through, and I suppose we get the same hazards arising from different managers. So PINs are effective. The fact that I've issued 40 doesn't, or whatever, don't take that into account. They are effective and they do work.
Yeah. But you know, 40 PINs doesn't mean they didn't work. It means that there were 40 problems.
Correct.
You know?
And that's what I'm saying. That revolving sort of management at our workplace breeds that sort of behaviour.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of our audience have that experience of high turnover with management and having to deal with the different styles and who goes by the books, who doesn't go by the books.
Correct. Yep.
So I've had I've had someone mention to me that when they were a HSR, a lot of the time they would raise their consultation during committee meetings because it gave them the opportunity to do it at once with their HSR supporting them, but in front of management. And of course, at the consultation at the committee meetings, everything's recorded on minutes. What do you think about that? Do you reckon it's a good strategy?
That's great. We do that as well.
Good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice.
So that's a good gateway to providing consultation. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
All right. Nice
and
tip.
And start off in the DWG. Start the process there and follow through the SHE committee. Have that paper trail. And a paper trail is factual. So if the paper trail is there, the company can't deny it.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so some good tips for you guys. Good tips. Okay, so steps for issuing a PIN. You want to walk us through that, Sean?
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so before issuing a PIN, you must consult. So you must inform your employer or employer representative you will issue a PIN if the problem you have already raised with him or her does not get fixed. Under the 2004 Act, the rep can issue a PIN only after consulting about remedying the contravention or likely contravention. Section 60, Part 2.
Great.
Okay, so filling in the PIN form. Fill in the boxes or spaces on the PIN. Start with your name, the name of your DWG, and union if any. We have the VTHC PIN form here available for you to download and keep.
And I'll show you guys that one in a second too.
Okay. No. WorkSafe inspectors are judging PINs invalid if they are not addressed to the employer. That is the name of the company or department. Do not address the PIN to the manager in charge of the site, even if this is the general manager or the principal of the school.
Yeah. So make sure you've got the duty holder's name on the form.
Okay. So you've got to specify your reasoning for the PIN. You must write down your reasons for issuing the PIN, and you must specify which part or parts of the Act or its regulations is being broken or has been broken or is likely to keep being broken or is likely to be broken again. Contact your union for help with this if you are not sure. One issue at a time. You can only deal with one problem or issue at a time on a PIN. If there are a few different problems like plant maintenance, use of chemicals and consultation, you need to write 3 separate PINs. If more than one issue is listed on a PIN and the employer challenges it, then it is likely that the inspector will rule that it is invalid.
Great, all right.
Compliance date. Put down a date by which you want the problem fixed. This has at least 8 days after the day when you wrote the PIN and gave it to the employer. Advise on how to remedy. You may write down on how you think the problem or likely problem can be fixed, but you do not have to do this.
All right.
Sign the PIN and ask your employer or employer rep to sign the PIN to show that they have seen it. It doesn't matter if he or she doesn't sign the PIN, it is still valid.
And last but not least,
provide a copy. Give the employer or employer rep a copy of the PIN. When you do this, remind them that they have to do something about the PIN within the time you've given them. This can be either to fix the problem or to ask a WorkSafe inspector to come out to the workplace, which is sections 62 and 63.
Yeah, and we'll get to that one in a second. Last but not least.
Last one, displaying the PIN. Under the 2004 Act, a person to whom a PIN has been issued must, if the person is an employee, bring it to the attention of his or her employer. If the person is not an employee or is an employer, must bring the PIN to the attention of every person whose work is affected by it, and also display a copy of the PIN in a prominent place at or near the workplace. Keep a copy for yourself and give a copy to your union OHS officer if possible. Okay, so we've got here Sean's kindly provided a PIN that he has served. So Sean, yeah, do you want to kind of walk us through this a little bit? Yeah, no worries. So this was a product, it was kitty litter that was being stored in the racking. It was overhanging quite a bit. The stability of the stock was quite poor. We had, myself and my other HSRs and my DWG had filled out hazard reports. It had been filtered through our DWG. We'd have to I personally had to pull down 100 pallets from the racking to make them safe, and then before they could go back up. And it came to an end when it came to about the third time, I think it was. We had given a notice of consultation after the second time, the first and second time. This might have been one of the times when I was feeling a bit generous and hopeful that they were going to fix it with the notice of consultation, but it ended up coming to the PIN. Okay. And so, you know, we've obviously redacted a bit of information here, but of course, Sean's got his name there. He put the name of the team coordinator there, so that was the duty holder there. The name of the company, where it was delivered in person, and so tell us a little about the section here, the details of contravention. Okay, so Section 21 of the OHS Act 2004. It's the main section, I suppose, especially for issuing PINs. To have them upheld is the best section to use. I've found with my experience, other HSRs have tried to use subsections of the Act, and that can actually make them invalid if they quote the wrong subsection. So I leave that as a generic Section 21 of the OHS Act, and they've never been deemed invalid because I haven't gone into too much detail. Because there's a lot of subsections under Section 21. Good point. Okay, all right. And now you've chosen to offer what remedy here? Yes. Okay, and so do you often give that option? Do you often give your advice on that? If I deem that there's a risk to team members and I've got a great idea on how to fix it, then I will. It's not my duty and it's not my responsibility. But in the interest of risk mitigation and getting things safe for my members and from my DWG, Nice. Okay. All right. And what I'll quickly show you guys here too is, again, in the same way we have the HSR consultation form, we've got a PIN form, and I'll just swap over so you guys can see the PIN form here. Again, same pieces of information, your name, your DWG, the duty holder. We've got a nice tick here to show that you have consulted with the duty holder, who it's been served to, and what I like about this one is that you know, it already shows you you know, it's in accordance with Section 60, which is your ability to issue the PIN. It shows you what contravention you're referring to, and you can, of course, give your opinion. And in accordance with Section 61, you can choose to offer your opinion on how it should be remedied. So, yeah, this is a nice one to keep, and as I said, you can... That is a good format. It's a nice, easy format, Now, I'm just wondering, how do you deal with intimidation and threats when you do try to do your consultation or say that you are going to issue a PIN? What happens there? Always be calm. Always be calm. I've found, obviously, after issuing quite a few, they'll put up roadblocks, idle threats. I've been accused of putting my members of my DWG at risk. But the main thing is to stay calm and always have someone there with you. Always. 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 Yeah. If you're going into a stressful situation or a challenging situation, make sure you've got people there to support you. Nice. Okay, that's really good advice. And sorry, I just realised you weren't able to see the PIN screen, but now you can. As we said, it's a really nice format, and it easily guides you through which sections of the Act you are referring to as well. So yeah, nice one for you to download and keep. But we'll head back to the PowerPoint now. Okay.
So what does the employer do when they receive a PIN? Now, the employer has two options once they've been issued a PIN by a HSR. The first one is that they must comply by the compliance date as written on the PIN, or they can request the attendance of an inspector within 7 days, irrespective of the compliance date written on the PIN. So regardless of what option the employer chooses to take, the employer must always notify those affected by the PIN and display the PIN on the workplace notice board for everyone in the DWG to see. And a failure for the employer to commit to either of the two options above, so either complying with the compliance date or requesting the attendance of an inspector within 7 days, if they fail to do either of those, that's a contravention of the Act and it has penalties attached. So it's pretty serious if your employer chooses not to comply with what the Act says. So inspectors and PINs. Now this one can be intimidating for everyone, so it's nice to kind of go through it. If after you have issued a PIN and your employer disputes it, your employer must request a WorkSafe inspector to attend the workplace to inquire into it. Now that inspector is required by law to speak with you, the rep who issued the PIN, and that's under section 102 of the Act, and it's called announcement of entry. Now if this does not happen, you must contact your union. And if the employer simply ignores the PIN, then he or she is breaking the law and may be taken to court by WorkSafe. The inspector investigates the matter and can affirm, modify or cancel the PIN. The inspector must also advise all parties of their right to seek a review of the inspector's decision with regards to the notice under Part 10 of the Act, and that's section 111. Now, I'll just remind you guys, these PowerPoint slides will be available for you to collect, so if any of the legalese here is going past you, that's okay. We've got it in writing for you to keep. Now, always keep a copy of the PIN for your own records, and a copy for your union's health and safety officer or your workplace health and safety officer as well. A person to whom a PIN has been issued must either comply with the PIN within the required time or within 7 days after the notice is issued, require the inspector to attend the workplace, section 62 or section 63. So basically what we mentioned before. If an inspector is called to a workplace to inquire into a disputed PIN, WorkSafe must ensure that the inspector attends the workplace as soon as possible and before the day specified on the PIN for it to be complied with. What can an elected OHS rep expect from a WorkSafe inspector who has been called into the workplace because of a disputed PIN? Well, according to the WorkSafe publication overview of how inspectors deal with specific issues, this is what should happen. When requested, an inspector must attend the workplace as soon as possible, but before the day specified on the PIN as being the day by which the notice must be complied with, so before the date written on the PIN. The inspector will notify both the rep and who issued the PIN, so, you know, it might be a different rep, and the person who received the PIN that he or she will be attending the workplace before the compliance date as written on the PIN. Now, the inspector should try to arrange a mutually convenient time to attend the workplace, so they need to consider you as a HSR and what's convenient for you too. Now, unless the parties agree to meet jointly, the inspector will meet first with the rep to get the background and details of the issue leading to the PIN, and then with the person to whom the PIN was issued to obtain details of why the PIN has been disputed. Do not feel pressured to meet jointly with your employer without having met with the inspector first. If you do wish to have other workers or a union rep present at the meeting to discuss the issues or provide more information, this should be acceptable. And if the relevant rep is for some reason not available, for example on leave, the inspector may gather information from other affected workers or health and safety reps or deputy reps. Generally, however, this should not happen and the inspector should not determine the PIN until they have spoken to the rep who issued the PIN. Now, if you are a rep who's issued the PIN and you find out later that an inspector hasn't been to the workplace and they haven't spoken to you, make sure you contact that inspector to arrange for him or her to return to speak with you. Now, after speaking with the rep, the inspector will meet with the person to whom the PIN was issued and obtain details of why the PIN has been disputed. As noted above, though, if all parties agree to have a joint meeting, that can all happen at once. And the inspector may also seek further information from other relevant people. Now, after the discussion with all parties, it might be agreed that the PIN issued has been or can be resolved, and there is no longer a dispute over the PIN. In this case, the inspector will document a summary of the issues and the agreed measures in an entry report and provide this to the rep and the person to whom the PIN was issued, and this is all under section 103 of the Act. At this point, the inspector may suggest that as a rep you might withdraw the PIN, but we suggest you do not agree to do this. Insist always that the PIN must stand. Write resolved on it together with what the agreed measures are. Now, question, Sean, you were smirking a little bit there, so tell us why you were smirking.
Oh, well, yeah, it can be quite daunting.
Yeah.
In WorkSafe inspectors. When they do come out, the one tip I will give is you've pretty much got to do all the work for them. So have everything written down, your reasons, have everything documented, and so they can see it for themselves. It makes for a more favourable outcome, I've found. So when the inspector comes, they'll sit down and talk with you, and it can be quite daunting. Or again, never going by yourself. Take a support person, which you're well entitled to do. And stick to your guns, yeah? Stick to your guns and, like I said, use your support networks. Yeah.
And yeah, and I think, you know, you were very much in agreement to, you know, don't withdraw the PIN.
No, absolutely. Do not withdraw the PIN. And as I said, you can get some inspectors. I've dealt with quite a few. And I've actually got 2 that aren't allowed back on my site. So you can get some that are blatantly not favourable, and so yeah, you've got to identify that, and there's a process for that also.
Yeah, that's a bit securing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can actually have an avenue where you can make complaints, etc. about inspectors. I have had other inspectors which have been neutral. I won't say favourable. Well, what we're after as a HSR, I suppose, is someone neutral who will take things on face value. So yeah, you can get either. It's a bit of a luck.
Of course, it's going to be a pull. Whoever's available at the time comes out, you know?
That's right, yeah.
All right, so if the problem you put the PIN on hasn't been fixed by the date you gave and the WorkSafe inspector hasn't come to your workplace about it, ring the nearest WorkSafe office and ask to talk to an inspector. Call your union to inform them of the situation and that you have rung WorkSafe and talk to an inspector. All right. So, Sean, walk us through what if the PIN remains in dispute.
So, if the PIN remains in dispute, and it hasn't been resolved by all parties, the inspector will determine which of these 4 actions will be taken. Not valid. A PIN is not valid if it does not affect the members of the reps DWG unless it is issued under Section 59, where another rep has acted because a rep is unavailable. The rep had not first consulted with the duty holder about remedying the issue. It does not state the rep's belief there has been a contravention and the reasons for that belief. Does not specify the provision of the Act or the regs. Does not specify a day, being at least 8 days after the issue of the PIN, by which the matter is to be remedied. Has not been given to the person in a way listed in Section 64 of the Act, service of PIN or inspector's notice. Note that Section 65, the Act states that certain formal irregularities or defects do not make a PIN invalid. If the PIN is in fact invalid, when the inspector may in these circumstances suggest to the rep that it should be withdrawn, the rep then has the option of reissuing a corrected valid PIN. If the PIN is determined to be invalid, then the inspector will deal with the substantial issue raised in the PIN. If the inspector believes the duty holder is contravening the Act or regs and voluntary compliance is not achieved, then the inspector should issue an improvement notice.
Great. And the other option of affirm?
Affirm. If the PIN is valid and the inspector supports the stated contravention, the compliance date and the measures to remedy it, then the inspector should affirm it. Affirm with modifications. The inspector may modify the PIN if there are things like multiple contraventions on one PIN or inappropriate compliance dates, etc.
And lastly, cancel.
Cancel. The inspector will cancel the PIN if there has been no contravention or if the person to whom the PIN has been served is not the correct duty holder. In either of these outcomes, the inspector will complete an issue and entry report that will address the matters regarding the issue of the PIN, the matters in dispute and the decision of the inspector. The inspector will also complete a PIN inquiry outcome notice and sign and date the disputed PIN, recording on it the PIN inquiry notice outcome notice number and whether the PIN was not valid, affirmed, affirmed with modifications, or cancelled. The inspector will give the entry report and PIN inquiry outcome notice to both the person to whom the PIN was issued and the OH&S rep. The inspector will advise the parties that the decision is reviewable under Section 127 of the OH&S Act. No. Where a PIN has been affirmed or affirmed with modifications, or the inspector has issued an improvement notice, then the inspector should organise a follow-up visit on or soon after the relevant compliance date. If the problem you put the PIN on hasn't been fixed by the date you gave and a WorkSafe inspector hasn't come to your workplace about it, ring the nearest WorkSafe office and ask to talk to an inspector. Call your union and inform them of the situation and that you have rung WorkSafe and talked to an inspector.
All right, now again, you were smirking a little bit, especially when you were talking about cancelling the PIN. So have you ever had an inspector determine a PIN to be invalid or affirmed with modifications or cancelled?
Yes, I have, yeah.
All right, let's maybe we'll do, okay, let's do an invalid one.
Yeah, okay, cool.
What was the reasons for an invalid one?
The reasons for the invalid one was, I touched on it before, was the wrong section of the Act.
Yeah.
So
okay.
that subsection, that's why since that time I've always left it as a generic Section 21. Yeah.
All right, what about cancelling?
Cancelling. I was asked to recently, but I refrained.
You refrained?
Yes, I did.
And what made you refrain? Were you just, so assured that there was such an issue at hand?
I was, and I knew that the manager in question was doing his best to get out of it and wasn't forthcoming with the inspector about the information he was giving either. So that made me stand my ground.
Nice. Yeah, good on you for pushing that, because that intimidation seems to happen a lot, and Sean seems to be giving the advice to stick with your guns and just make sure you have a lot of support with you at all times and keeping a paper trail, which
absolutely,
is
and do your homework.
Do your homework.
Know the Act.
Know the Act. Know the Act. Okay, so what if you don't agree with the inspector's decision? All right, so if you don't agree with the inspector's decision, you can apply for an internal review. If you want to apply for an internal review of a decision made by an inspector during a visit, you must lodge the approved application form with the internal review unit within 7 days of the date the decision came to your notice. WorkSafe must conduct the internal review within the legislated timeframe of either 7 or 14 days, depending on the category of the reviewable decision. But it will not be considered if it has not been submitted in the approved form and given to the internal review unit. Now, if WorkSafe does not notify you of the internal review decision within the required time, that means WorkSafe has taken to have made the decision to affirm the reviewable decision. So you've won. All right. Now, if you've lodged an application for an internal review and you do not receive a decision with the required time frame, or you received an internal review decision that you're not happy with, you can then apply to the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal, so VCAT, for an external review within 14 days of the date the internal review decision was made or the non-decision was first made to your attention. All right, so our last poll, I'm just gonna quickly ask you guys if anyone here has actually applied for an internal review or gone to VCAT before over a PIN. And of course, we've got the options of no, I haven't, yes, I've applied for an internal review, or yes, I've applied for VCAT. So Sean, have you ever applied for an internal review of VCAT before?
Yes, I have. I've applied for an internal review.
Yeah.
I wasn't quite happy with the outcome of that either. It was it's a delicate section of the Act, Section 76. So,
oof. All right, delicate.
So I thought I'd exhausted all my avenues, and I wasn't willing to take it any further.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what did the inspector what did the inspector judge the PIN to be before you took it for an internal review?
They judged it to be invalid. Invalid, yeah.
And it was they just didn't agree that there was the OHS issue at hand.
Correct, yeah. My whole thing was they didn't actually do any interviews with any of the persons concerned. So that was my main sticking point. Nothing major.
Big sticking point.
I didn't think it was anything. No. So yeah, the response from the internal review was not favourable.
Okay, all right. And I mean, this is kind of reflected in the results of the poll, because so far 91% of you have said no, you've never gone for an internal review or to VCAT, but 9% of you have said you've applied for an internal review. So it's interesting that no one's really taken it to VCAT, and I think, yeah, I mean, I think
that is interesting.
Why do you think VCAT is so scary?
I don't know about it's scary. I know the process itself.
Yeah.
Like you've just touched on the process there for actually asking for an internal review. It's quite stringent, and from my experience, if you make one small error, then they can just deem it invalid. You know, there's too much red tape around it.
Yeah. And like a lot of people have said that, you know, it can be quite costly, but you know, this is why if you are a union member, this is what your membership fees pay for, because it pays for you to have that representation and to have a lawyer at hand and to pay for your legal fees.
That's a great point.
Yeah, so sometimes it's not as unattainable as it can seem, but hopefully none of you guys have to go through that procedure. All right, so all right, now we've got 15 minutes left, which is great. So we have some time for questions. So let's please submit any questions you might have, and bear with me for one moment. All right. All right, so now a question came in, do inspectors always do a visual inspection of the issue, or do you have to request that they do a visual inspection?
You may request, they won't always do a visual inspection, but if it makes the risk a lot clearer and tells a story, then absolutely you've got the right to ask them, and should do. Yeah.
And why do you think that some of them don't do visual inspections?
I'd say a lot of them aren't thorough enough, I'll be honest, and you get different people with who follow the process differently, I found, with inspectors. Yeah,
okay, so not everyone goes by the book. And
no, spot on.
Yeah, okay, all right, that's interesting. And it's interesting that a lot of, we've just had someone come in and say that, send in a question that they didn't actually know there was an option to go to VCAT.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it's important, I mean, this is why we try to do these webinars. It's important that as HSRs you do know all your
aware
rights,
of all, absolutely,
you know, because it is an option, and we have helped some people do that process, and it can be daunting, but when you do have that support, you know.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, so feel free to type in any questions. We've got the chat option box here. All right, beautiful. Now, we've got a question here. If they delay the projects giving reasonable reasons that you cannot reject, how can we get things done? How can getting things done is difficult? So, all right, is there a clarification for that? So so who's delaying the project in this? Are you talking about the inspector, or are you talking about the employer delaying the projects or fixing the issue at hand? If you can clarify that question, that would be great. We've had the other question, has anybody issued a PIN for stress or mental health issues before? Have you, Sean?
Yes, I have, yeah.
Nice, all right.
Yes,
Tell us a bit about that one.
So we had at our work, we have obviously heavy manual handling and forklift work. People were getting selected for the forklift work based on their performance.
What kind of performance do you mean? Like they were doing well at work?
Cases per hour.
Yeah, okay.
How fast you could pick boxes.
So you guys have like quotas to hit?
We do, yes. Yeah, absolutely. But they were using that as a tool, and so you'd have casuals that would come in and were picking every day, 10 hours a day. And we had people breaking down on the floor. And I got about 10 people that were affected. And
when you say affected, did they come to you and tell you their problems?
Yes, they did.
Did you just notice it?
I noticed, and when I engaged my DWG, I got some more information and found out there were more people affected. Okay,
so again, engage your DWG if you suspect something's happening.
Yeah.
And if some people are coming to you, maybe everyone else is also feeling the same way. But continue.
Yeah. So from that, I actually initiated a cease work around it as well, and I got a commitment from the company that rotation wouldn't be based on performance.
Good.
And people were also getting hassled for small gaps in their assignments. I also put a time parameter a rough time parameter around people not getting hassled so they could just do their work. Yeah.
So when you say gaps in their assignments, what do you mean?
So we have time in motion. That's how our performance is.
Okay. Okay, so they were noticing there was like a period of time where someone wasn't working.
Correct. Where they hadn't picked up a box.
Ooh, all right.
Yeah, and it's just pathetic. You know, there's that much congestion can happen there quite often.
Yeah.
And you can have gaps of 5 minutes easily sometimes. But the company didn't want to, I suppose, admit that there was a problem with their systems.
Yes, and it's interesting you talk about this because, you know, last month I did the webinar on behavioural-based safety with Sarah Ross from the AMWU, and we were talking about this exact thing where workplaces implement these quotas and these unreasonable timeframes to get things done, and when things aren't getting done, they blame the worker, and mental health and stress just gets ignored or blamed on the worker. So
Absolutely.
It's amazing to hear that you've done a cease work for it and issued PINs for mental health and stress. So this is a good thing. Like, you know, cease work and PINs, they're not just there for you know, the hazards as we might think, you know, like a chemical hazard or you know, they're there for, you know, mental psychosocial issues are a hazard and they're part of health and safety, and you have every right to issue PINs for that.
Absolutely, and engage with your members because often a lot of people don't speak about it either. So,
and so you did a really good thing with consulting with your work, with your DWG about it, you know, because you found that other people are experiencing the same issue. All right, so let's go back to that original question now. We've had some clarification, and it was, if the employer keeps delaying fixing the issue with reasonable reasons, you know, they're acknowledging that it can be hard to issue the PIN or get things done if they keep delaying it. Do you have any advice or any tactics that you do when there's an issue at hand that you've consulted with your employer and they keep delaying it?
A tactic would be notice a consultation PIN. Pretty much. But as I said, always engage with your DWG. I can't sort of stress that enough. Get support from your members, and I suppose, it's not a threat. It's a right. So for me, if they're not playing ball, that's what the Act is for. There's a process there. There's HSRs that we should follow. When the employer isn't taking the appropriate steps to remedy the hazard. And a little bit of a follow up with you know, issuing PINs and cease work on mental health and stress. Did you have to have medical certificates to prove it? No, I did not. No, I had written statements from each team member that was affected by it.
Good. Okay, so get those written statements in, and don't be bullied into thinking that you need to go to a doctor to get a certificate about your mental health. It doesn't need to be disclosed in that manner either.
Spot on.
All right. Okay. Now, we'll go back to the question. You know, have you? So, I mean, you've issued so many PINs, Sean. Have you? I'm assuming you've made a mistake once or twice.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. So, walk us through what happened and what you learnt with one of those mistakes.
Okay. So biggest mistake, or mistake I made a few times, it took me a while to learn it, was do your homework. If someone says, oh, the company did this, don't get out your PIN book or your notice and get ready to start writing. Actually get your facts straight first. I can't stress that enough. I have been caught out where you take someone's word for something and you think, okay, but when you actually get the facts, it's a totally different scenario. So do your investigations first. Like make sure that you're making the right decision and an informed decision.
And when you say you get their word for something, do you mean like a word in the sense that they've said that they have followed what the Act says they should do?
Yes,
or
that?
All right. So it's important. Like it's good to arm yourself with the powers and rights that you have as a HSR from the Act, but it's also good to know what duties your employer is meant to hold.
Absolutely. It's a very important part of the Act. The employer's duties, as well as Section 21. It's
because you want to keep them accountable to keep that workplace as a duty holder safe as well, and it's it's empowering to know that you can point out what they've done wrong, not just point out what your rights are as well. All right, now keep going with any questions that you might have. What else have we got coming in? All right, so we've had another follow-up question from Delay Tactics, and that was, you know, every time my work provides statements that the project will be done by the next time in 6 months. So by saying it, they keep pushing it further and further and further. What else would you recommend with this as an advice?
Well, if you haven't issued a PIN or given a notice of consultation, you can ring WorkSafe as well, and get them to come out, especially if you've got a record of the consultation, it's even better. But yeah, if there's an ongoing hazard or issue in the workplace and they're not dealing with it appropriately and putting it off, definitely use your powers as a HSR.
Yeah, because again, remember they have the duty to keep the workplace healthy and safe.
Monitor conditions.
Monitor the conditions every so often. Like you'll be empowered when you go through and you read through what duty holder sections are in the Act, and you'll start thinking in your head what your employer is not following, and you'll have ammo to go in and ammo to consult with issues and issue those PINs that you might need to be issuing. All right, so let's, someone's just asked if I can reiterate how to download the consultation forms. All right, so I'll go back and open up the, so you might not be able to, so on your, on your pane, your control pane to the right, there's a little heading called Handouts, and if you open up the drop arrow, you can literally just, it's a hyperlink, so there's a hyperlink for the PIN form, it's a PDF. There's also the hyperlink for the HSR consultation form, and I'll just, in the meantime, open up my screen so you guys can see both of them again. Bear with me. All right, guys, so again, just click the drop down for the handouts. You'll see the HSR consultation form and the PIN form for HSRs, both as hyperlinks. And you know, these will help with those delay tactics. Make sure you print them and you have those copies at work. Make sure, you know, when you have the consultation form, you've got a copy for yourself, you've got a copy for the duty holder. Give it to your OHS officer, give it to your union delegate. And the same goes for the PIN forms to issue. Definitely keep those copies and keep them for yourself.
And always have a witness for your consultation. And
yeah, there we go. Yeah. Have a good, it's a great tip, Sean. Thank you. Yeah, these are excellent. Oh yeah, and display it on the notice board to keep your DWG engaged. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
Have you found that's been quite effective? Have you found?
Yes. Yeah. People, if people do look at it off and on as they walk past, and I'll get people coming up, you know, thanks, or you know, glad it's been remedied, or I tell people also. Also tell people to go up and have a look. Yeah, and I imagine it engages those ones that aren't actually engaged in the health and safety issues at work too. Absolutely, right? Yeah. And if you tell them how you've remedied the problem or how it started, you know, through the DWG process, it also gets them active. You want active people in your DWG. Yeah, because I keep hearing you say the support of the DWG is so important. Absolutely, yeah. No, that's good. All right, well, we don't seem to have any more questions in, but again, a reminder, and I'll flip it back to the PowerPoint here. Give me 1 second. All right, now on the PowerPoint, again, you can see the link, and that's for ohsrep.org.au//ask Renata form. So any questions you may not have come with tonight or couldn't think of on the spot, feel free to please send them in to Ask Renata. She's a real person. And we'll make sure to collate those Q&As, and I'll have them displayed again on our archive page. So thank you again, Sean, so much for this. I hope everyone else has found this very helpful. And thank you everyone else for attending today's webinar. And once you leave again, you'll receive, I'll email everyone out again within 24 to 48 hours, a link to view the recording and a link to download the presentation from today. But on behalf of the OHS unit at Trades Hall and Sean, thank you for joining us this evening. Thank you. Thanks, guys.